They didn't mention this in school, and there's a reason why. 4,000 years ago, someone wrote down a story so powerful, so fundamentally true about what it means to be human, that it terrified the institutions that built our education system. This isn't ancient mythology. This is a mirror. And what you're about to see in that mirror will change how you understand your own mortality, your relationships, and what you're actually living for. The Epic of Gilgamesh rewrites everything. You know that feeling when you're sitting in a classroom and the teacher is explaining something and you can just feel that they're leaving something out? Like there's a whole layer of truth they're dancing around but never quite saying. Like they're reading from a script that's missing entire pages. That's what happened with this story. The Epic of Gilgamesh is the oldest written narrative in human history. We're talking about 2100 BC, thousands of years before Homer, before the Bible was compiled, before almost every classic you were forced to read in English class. It was carved into clay tablets in ancient Mesopotamia by scribes whose names we'll never know. It survived empires. It survived the collapse of civilizations. It survived wars, floods, and the deliberate destruction of libraries. And yet, somehow, it never made it into the standard curriculum. Think about that for a second. The oldest story humanity ever bothered to write down and preserve. The one story that mattered enough to carve into stone and clay so it would outlast everything else. And it's been kept out of schools, out of the cultural conversation, out of the places where we're supposed to learn what it means to be human. But here's where it gets strange. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't some administrative oversight where they just forgot to include humanity's oldest story in the education system. No, this was deliberate, intentional, suppressed. And once you understand why, you'll see the education system differently forever. Because once you understand what the Epic of Gilgamesh is actually about, you realize it's not just a story, it's a psychological blueprint. It's a manual for understanding the deepest parts of yourself that you've probably never examined. It's a map of the human soul that was drawn 4,000 years ago and somehow remains more accurate than anything written since. And the people who design our education systems, they don't want you examining those parts. They don't want you understanding yourself at that level. Think about what schools teach you. They teach you to chase achievement, to accumulate, to climb, to win, to prove yourself, to be the best, to never stop striving, to fill the void inside you with more stuff, more status, more success, to measure your worth by your accomplishments, to believe that if you just work hard enough, achieve enough, earn enough, you'll finally feel complete. You'll finally be satisfied. You'll finally be enough. But what if the oldest story ever written contradicts all of that? What if it says the opposite? What if it suggests that everything we've built our lives around is fundamentally backwards? That's exactly what the Epic of Gilgamesh does, and that's exactly why it was kept from you. This ancient text doesn't celebrate the pursuit of power. It doesn't glorify endless ambition or reward relentless striving. Instead, it tears into the heart of what drives us, and it reveals something that modern society desperately doesn't want you to know: that everything you've been taught to chase is built on a lie. A comfortable lie, a profitable lie, but a lie nonetheless. The story shows you what happens when someone has everything: unlimited power, unlimited resources, unlimited authority, complete dominion over everyone around him. A man who can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, to whoever he wants. A man who has achieved what modern culture tells us is the ultimate success. And it shows you what that actually does to a person's soul, what it does to their relationships, what it does to their sense of meaning and purpose. Spoiler alert, it destroys them. But the real shock isn't that they hid this story from you. The real shock is what it reveals about you, about the part of yourself that's been quietly screaming the same desperate questions that Gilgamesh screamed 4,000 years ago. The part of you that wonders if all this striving actually means anything. The part of you that feels empty even when you've achieved what you thought you wanted. The part of you that's starting to suspect that maybe, just maybe, you've been chasing the wrong thing all along. And that's the part of you that terrifies the system. Gilgamesh wasn't just any king. He was the ultimate king. The kind of ruler that modern culture would celebrate as the pinnacle of success. The embodiment of everything we're taught to aspire toward. He ruled the city of Uruk, one of the greatest civilizations of ancient Mesopotamia. He had absolute power over his people. He had wealth beyond measure. He had monuments built in his honor that would stand for centuries. He had armies that obeyed his every command without question. He had the kind of authority that made grown men tremble at his approach. To the outside world, Gilgamesh had achieved what every ambitious person dreams of achieving. He had won. He had made it. He had reached the top. He was living the dream that our entire civilization is built around. But here's what makes Gilgamesh different from other ancient kings, and what makes this story so dangerous to the status quo. The epic doesn't hide what he did with all that power. It doesn't sanitize his story or present him as a noble ruler worthy of emulation. It doesn't give him the Hollywood treatment where the powerful are shown as secretly benevolent or misunderstood. Instead, it shows you exactly what unlimited power does to a human being when there are no checks on his desires, no consequences for his actions, and no one brave enough to tell him no. Gilgamesh used his authority to take whatever he wanted. He took women. He took resources. He took dignity from his people. He exercised his right as king to sleep with brides on their wedding nights before their husbands could consummate their marriages. He conscripted young men into his armies for endless building projects that served his ego more than his people's well-being. He demanded tributes and sacrifices from those who could barely afford to eat. He pushed his civilization to the breaking point in pursuit of his own glory, his own legacy, his own name living forever in history. The people of Uruk weren't grateful for their powerful king. They weren't proud to serve him. They suffered. They cried out in desperation. They begged the gods for relief from their tyrant king. They prayed for salvation. They whispered prayers in the darkness, hoping that someone, anyone, would hear their pleas and intervene. But here's the part that schools don't teach you. The part that textbooks conveniently skip over. The gods listened. Not because they were merciful, not because they cared about justice or fairness or the suffering of common people, but because the system was broken. Because a society built on one man's unlimited ambition cannot sustain itself. Because even the divine order recognized that something had to change, that the imbalance had become too great, that the universe itself was out of alignment. So the gods created Enkidu. Enkidu wasn't human in the traditional sense. He was wild, primal, untamed, raised by animals in the wilderness, far from the corrupting influence of civilization, uncorrupted by the desire for power and status and accumulation. He was everything Gilgamesh wasn't, and everything Gilgamesh desperately needed, though he didn't know it yet. Enkidu represented the part of humanity that civilization tries to suppress: authenticity, instinct, and presence, the ability to simply be without needing to achieve or prove anything. When Enkidu arrived at the gates of Uruk, he didn't come as a subject or a servant or a supplicant. He came as a challenge. He challenged Gilgamesh, not with armies or politics or diplomacy or the weapons of civilization. He challenged him with his presence, with his authenticity, with his refusal to bow to the king's authority, with his embodiment of a different way of being in the world. And something extraordinary happened. Instead of destroying Enkidu, which would have been the logical response from a tyrant, Gilgamesh recognized something in him: a mirror, a reflection of a part of himself that had been buried under layers of power and ego and the endless pursuit of dominance. A part of himself that he thought he'd killed long ago. And in that moment of recognition, something shifted deep within the king's soul. The tyrant king and the wild man became friends, brothers, soulmates, two halves of a whole that neither had known was incomplete. For the first time in his life, Gilgamesh had something that no amount of power could buy, no amount of money could purchase, no amount of authority could command. Genuine human connection. Someone who saw him not as a king, not as a symbol of power, not as someone to be feared or obeyed, but as a person. Someone who challenged him to be better. Someone who loved him for who he was, not what he had achieved. Someone who was willing to stand beside him as an equal, not below him as a subject. And that friendship changed everything. Together, they went on quests that took them beyond the walls of Uruk. They fought monsters that no army could defeat. They faced dangers and challenges that no amount of royal authority could protect them from. They experienced true partnership, the kind where both people matter equally, where neither is using the other for gain, where vulnerability is possible because trust has been earned through shared struggle and genuine care. They experienced what it meant to have someone in your corner, not because they had to be, but because they chose to be. This is the part that the modern education system really doesn't want you to understand. Because what Gilgamesh discovered through his friendship with Enkidu contradicts the entire foundation of how we've been taught to live. It undermines the narrative that we've all been sold since childhood. He discovered that power means nothing without connection, that all your authority rings hollow if there's no one to share it with, no one who truly knows you. That achievement means nothing without someone to celebrate it with, someone who understands the struggle it took to get there. That dominance is a hollow substitute for intimacy. That control is a poor replacement for love, that fear is a terrible foundation for any relationship. That all the resources in the world, all the money and status and recognition cannot fill the void that only genuine human relationship can fill. In other words, he discovered what it actually means to be human. Not the version of human that our society sells us, the ambitious, competitive, achievement-obsessed version, but the deeper version, the version that craves connection, that needs to be seen and known, that finds meaning not in accumulation, but in relationship, that understands that we are fundamentally social creatures, that we cannot thrive in isolation no matter how much power we have. But the story doesn't end there, and this is where it gets truly devastating. Because just when Gilgamesh had found what he didn't know he was looking for, just when he was beginning to understand what truly matters in life, the gods took it away. Enkidu fell ill, not from battle wounds or poison or any external attack that could be fought with sword or strategy. He simply deteriorated, His body weakened day by day. His strength faded like a candle burning down to nothing. The wild vitality that had defined him, that primal force that had made him who he was, began to drain away like water through cupped hands. And there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. Gilgamesh watched it happen. Day after day, he sat beside his friend and watched the life leave his body, and he was powerless to stop it. This is the moment where the epic becomes truly profound, because Gilgamesh, the king who could command armies with a single word, who could reshape cities according to his vision, who could bend the world to his will through sheer force of authority, suddenly discovered that there are things power cannot control. There are forces in the universe that don't care about your authority or your wealth or your status or your accomplishments. Death doesn't negotiate. Death doesn't recognize kings. Death doesn't bow to power. Death comes for everyone equally, the peasant and the king, the weak and the strong, the young and the old. As Enkidu lay dying, Gilgamesh sat beside him, not as a king surrounded by courtiers and advisors, not as someone with answers or solutions or the power to fix the situation, just as a man watching someone he loved slip away into the darkness, just as a human being confronting the reality of loss. And in those final moments, something happened inside Gilgamesh that no amount of power had ever accomplished. He was broken open. His carefully constructed walls came crashing down. His defenses proved useless against the simple, terrible fact of death. When Enkidu died, Gilgamesh didn't just lose a friend. He lost the person who had shown him what it meant to be alive. He lost the mirror that had reflected back his own humanity. He lost the only person who had ever truly seen him, known him, accepted him for who he really was beneath all the titles and power. He lost the one relationship that had made his life feel meaningful. And the grief that followed was absolute. It was total. It consumed him. The epic describes Gilgamesh's mourning in devastating detail that would make any modern therapist uncomfortable. He didn't just feel sad. He didn't move on quickly or process his emotions in a healthy way. He didn't compartmentalize his pain or throw himself into work to distract himself from what he was feeling. He grieved. He wailed like an animal. He tore at his clothes until they were shreds. He covered himself in dust and ashes. He sat in the dirt for 7 days and 7 nights, unable to eat, unable to sleep, unable to do anything but feel the enormity of his loss. He refused comfort. He refused distraction. He refused to pretend that everything was going to be okay. He simply sat with his pain and let it be what it was. And in that grief, something shifted in him. Something fundamental changed. The tyrant king, who had taken whatever he wanted from whoever he wanted, who had exercised dominance over everyone around him, who had built his entire identity on power and control and the accumulation of status, that man was gone. In his place was someone new, someone broken, someone real, someone who had learned that power cannot protect you from loss, that authority cannot shield you from pain, that all the achievements in the world cannot prevent the people you love from dying. But here's where the story takes a turn that modern culture absolutely cannot accept. Gilgamesh didn't try to move on or get closure or find healing or any of the other sanitized language we use to avoid actually feeling our pain. He didn't go to a therapist or read a self-help book or join a support group. He didn't try to process his grief in a healthy way and then move forward with his life. Instead, he became obsessed with a question that had never occurred to him before. A question that shattered everything he thought he knew about himself and the world. If Enkidu could die, then Gilgamesh could die too. This might seem obvious to us now, but for Gilgamesh, a man who had spent his entire life accumulating power and status, building monuments to his own greatness, ensuring that his name would live forever in the memory of his people, creating works that would outlast empires. This was a shattering realization. It wasn't just an intellectual understanding. It was a visceral, embodied knowledge that penetrated to the core of his being. All his achievements meant nothing if he was going to die anyway. All his monuments would eventually crumble into dust. All his legacy would eventually fade into obscurity. All his power would pass to someone else, someone who would probably squander it or use it differently. All the things he had built, all the things he had accomplished, all the things he had sacrificed for, none of it mattered in the face of death. He was mortal, and mortality changed everything. This is the part that the system doesn't want you to think about. Because once you really understand that you're going to die, not as an abstract concept that you know intellectually, but as a lived reality that you feel in your bones, that you can't escape from no matter how hard you try, everything changes. Your priorities shift. Your values reorganize themselves. The things that seemed so important suddenly seem trivial. The things you've been chasing your whole life suddenly seem like a waste of time. The status you've been climbing towards suddenly feels hollow. The money you've been accumulating suddenly seems pointless. Because what's the point of being the richest person in the graveyard? What's the point of having the most impressive tombstone? What's the point of leaving behind a legacy if you won't be here to enjoy it? If you won't be here to know that people remember you? Gilgamesh became obsessed with finding a way to escape death. He couldn't accept that Enkidu was gone forever, that he himself would someday be gone forever, that everything he'd built would eventually turn to dust and be forgotten. So he set out on a quest. He left Uruk. He abandoned his throne. He left behind all the trappings of power and authority that had defined his life for so long. He left behind his responsibilities, his palace, his position. He was searching for immortality. He was searching for a way to live forever, to escape the fundamental condition of human existence, to find some secret that the gods possessed that would allow him to cheat death. And this is where the story becomes a map for understanding the human condition. Because Gilgamesh's quest for immortality isn't really about living forever in some literal sense. It's about the desperate human attempt to escape the fundamental reality of our existence, that we are temporary, that we will die, that everything we build will eventually fall apart, that nothing lasts forever, that we are, in the end, insignificant specks in an uncaring universe. We all do this. We all engage in this quest for immortality. We just do it in different ways, in ways that are more socially acceptable, in ways that don't require us to admit what we're really doing. Some of us chase career success, telling ourselves that if we just achieve enough, build enough, accomplish enough, we'll feel like our life mattered. Some of us chase money, believing that if we just accumulate enough wealth, we'll finally be secure, finally be safe, finally be enough. Some of us chase status and recognition, thinking that if enough people know our name and respect us, if we become famous or influential, we'll have proven that our existence was meaningful. Some of us chase romantic love, believing that if we find the right person, our lives will finally make sense. Some of us chase children, thinking that creating new life will give our lives purpose and meaning. But it's all the same quest. It's all the same desperate attempt to outrun death, to build something that will outlast us, to create a legacy that proves we mattered, to leave behind evidence that we were here, that we existed, that our lives meant something. And Gilgamesh's journey shows us exactly where that quest leads. It shows us what happens when you pursue immortality with everything you have. It shows us the truth that our culture desperately wants to hide from us. Gilgamesh wandered into the wilderness, leaving behind everything that had defined him for so long. The palace with its towering walls, the throne carved from precious materials, the crown that symbolized his authority, none of it mattered anymore. He cast aside the trappings of kingship like a man shedding a heavy coat in summer. He was a man on a mission now, driven by a desperation that consumed him from the inside out, that burned through his veins like fire. He had heard of a man named Utnapishtim, someone who had been granted immortality by the gods themselves, someone who had achieved what no other mortal had ever achieved. If anyone knew the secret to escaping death, if anyone held the key to unlocking immortality, it would be him. Gilgamesh's journey was brutal beyond measure. He crossed mountains that seemed to touch the sky itself, peaks so high that the air grew thin and cold, where the wind howled like a living thing. He traversed deserts so vast and empty that they made him question whether he would ever find another living soul, whether civilization even existed anymore, whether he had wandered so far that he had left the world of men behind entirely. He encountered creatures and obstacles that would have stopped any ordinary person dead in their tracks. Wild beasts that roared with primal fury, treacherous terrain that threatened to swallow him whole, hunger and thirst that gnawed at his body constantly. But Gilgamesh was not ordinary. He was a king, a warrior, a man of legendary strength and determination. And more importantly, he was driven by something deeper than fear, more powerful than exhaustion, more consuming than physical pain. The terror of death and the desperate hope that immortality was possible, that there was a way out, that death was not inevitable, that somewhere in this vast world there existed a secret that would allow him to cheat the one thing that no one had ever cheated before. Along the way, he met a woman named Siduri, a tavern keeper who lived by the sea. She saw this wild, desperate man approaching her establishment and recognized something in him immediately. The look of someone who had lost everything that mattered. Someone who was running from something. Someone who was searching for something that he believed would save him. She saw the wildness in his eyes, the desperation in his movements, the way he seemed to be burning from the inside out. She tried to tell him something important, something that would change the course of his quest if he had been willing to listen. Something that contained more wisdom than all the philosophy ever written. She tried to offer him a perspective that might have saved him from his futile search. "Gilgamesh," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "why do you pursue this impossible dream? Why do you exhaust yourself searching for something that cannot be found? Why do you tear yourself apart chasing a goal that no mortal has ever achieved? The gods have made death the lot of mankind. Death is not a punishment or a curse. It is simply the condition of being human. Only the gods live forever. Only the gods have escaped the cycle of birth and death and decay. You are human. You are mortal. Accept your humanity. Accept your mortality. It is not a weakness or a failure. It is simply what you are." Enjoy the life you have been given. Eat good food and taste it fully. Drink wine and feel it warm your belly. Be merry and laugh without restraint. Love deeply and cherish the time you have with those you care about. Dance and sing and celebrate the simple fact that you are alive right now. In this moment, that is all that mortals can do. That is all that mortals have ever been able to do. And it is enough. It is more than enough. It is everything. But Gilgamesh couldn't hear her. His ears were closed to wisdom. He was too consumed by his fear, too desperate in his search, too convinced that there had to be another way, that death could be defeated if only he could find the right person, the right place, the right secret. He thanked her politely, but continued on his way, driven forward by the belief that Utnapishtim would have answers, that immortality was still possible, that death could be defeated by someone with enough courage and determination and strength. When he finally found Utnapishtim after weeks of arduous travel, Gilgamesh demanded to know the secret. He didn't ask politely or humbly. He demanded, how had he achieved immortality? What was the magic, the ritual, the hidden knowledge, the special practice that had allowed him to escape death's grasp? What had he done that no one else had thought to do? What made him special? And Utnapishtim told him a story. It was not the story Gilgamesh wanted to hear, but it was the story he needed to hear. He told Gilgamesh about a great flood that had once covered the entire earth, sent by the gods to destroy humanity because they had become too noisy, too chaotic, too much of a burden on the divine order. The gods had decided to wipe the slate clean and start over. But one god, Ea, had warned Utnapishtim about the coming disaster. Ea had told him to build a boat, a massive ark that could survive the deluge. Utnapishtim had done so, and he had saved himself and his family and representatives of every animal species. When the waters finally receded and the earth dried out, the gods had been so grateful for his faithfulness and his role in preserving life on earth that they had granted him immortality as a special reward. But here's the crucial part that Gilgamesh missed, the part that the epic wants us to understand. Utnapishtim's immortality wasn't something that could be earned or achieved through effort and determination. It wasn't a prize that could be won through courage or cleverness or strength. It wasn't a reward that was available to anyone who wanted it badly enough or worked hard enough. It was a unique gift, granted by the gods for a specific reason in a specific circumstance, in response to a specific act of obedience and service. It was not available to ordinary mortals. It was not something that Gilgamesh could obtain through any quest or trial or test, no matter how difficult or dangerous. Utnapishtim tried to tell Gilgamesh this directly, tried to make him understand the fundamental truth that he was refusing to accept. You cannot achieve immortality, Gilgamesh. It is not possible for you. It is not possible for any human being. You are human. Humans die. That is the nature of your existence. That is what it means to be human. Stop searching for something that does not exist. Stop running from the inevitable. Stop wasting your life chasing a dream that can never come true. Accept what you are. Accept your mortality. Find meaning in the time you have, not in the time you will never have. But Gilgamesh still refused to believe it. He insisted that there must be another way, another test, another challenge that he could overcome, another secret that he hadn't discovered yet. He couldn't accept that there was nothing he could do, that his strength and determination and courage were useless against death. And so, Utnapishtim gave him a test, perhaps out of pity for his desperation, perhaps to prove his point conclusively, perhaps to show Gilgamesh the futility of his quest in a way that he could not ignore. He told Gilgamesh that if he could stay awake for 7 days and 7 nights without sleeping, without closing his eyes even for a moment, without giving in to the body's natural need for rest, he would reconsider. If Gilgamesh could overcome sleep itself, perhaps, just perhaps, he could overcome death. If he could prove that he had the willpower and determination to do something that seemed impossible, then maybe there was hope for him. So Gilgamesh tried. He sat down with absolute determination and decided that he would not sleep. He would prove that he had the strength, the willpower, the sheer force of will to achieve the impossible. He would show Utnapishtim that he was different from other men, that he had what it took to do what no one else could do. And he failed. Within moments, or perhaps it only seemed like moments to him, he was asleep. His body, exhausted from his long journey and his emotional grief and his physical exertion, simply shut down. His consciousness fled. He couldn't even stay awake for 7 days. How could he possibly defeat death? How could he overcome the most powerful force in the universe if he couldn't even overcome his own body's need for sleep? When he woke up, Utnapishtim showed him the harsh truth in a way that he could not deny or rationalize away. He had Gilgamesh's wife bake bread every day for 7 days. Each loaf was marked with the date. When Gilgamesh woke up, he saw the 7 loaves of bread in various stages of decay, some fresh and soft, some stale and hard, some moldy and green with rot. A physical representation of the time that had passed while he slept. Proof that he could not even control his own body, let alone death itself. Proof that time moves forward whether we are conscious of it or not. Proof that decay and deterioration are inevitable. This is the moment where the epic delivers its most devastating truth. Gilgamesh cannot achieve immortality. There is no secret. There is no way out. Death is not an enemy that can be defeated through courage or cunning or determination or strength. Death is simply the condition of being human. It is not a problem to be solved. It is not a challenge to be overcome. It is a reality to be accepted, understood, and integrated into how we live our lives. And in that acceptance lies the only wisdom worth having, the only knowledge that actually matters, the only understanding that can free us from the desperate, exhausting quest for something that doesn't exist. Before Gilgamesh left to return to Uruk, defeated but perhaps slightly wiser, Utnapishtim gave him one final gift. Not immortality, but something else, something that might be more valuable in its own way. He gave him a plant that grew at the bottom of the ocean, a magical plant that had the power to restore youth, to reverse the aging process, to make an old man young again. It wouldn't make him immortal, but it would at least allow him to feel young again, to recapture some of what he had lost, to have a second chance at youth and vitality. Gilgamesh was grateful. He obtained the plant and began his journey back to Uruk, back to his city, back to his responsibilities as king. But on the way, he stopped to bathe in a pool of water. He wanted to refresh himself, to wash away the dust of his travels, to feel clean again. And while he was bathing, while he was vulnerable and distracted, a serpent came and ate the plant. The serpent shed its skin and slithered away into the darkness, leaving Gilgamesh with nothing but the memory of what he had held and lost. This is not a random detail. This is not just a plot twist designed to make the story more dramatic. This is the epic telling us something profound about the nature of human existence, something that our culture desperately wants us to ignore. Even when we do find something that might help us, even when we get close to what we're seeking, even when we think we have found a solution, it can be taken away from us in an instant. We cannot hold on to anything. We cannot control the outcomes of our lives. We cannot guarantee that we will get what we want or keep what we have. Everything is temporary. Everything is fleeting. Everything will eventually be taken from us. All we have is the present moment. All we have is now. This breath, this heartbeat, this moment of consciousness. That is all that any of us have ever had or will ever have. Gilgamesh, weary and changed, began his journey back to Uruk, the great city he had left in search of answers. The once proud king who had set out to conquer death now returned with a weight on his heart and a deeper understanding of the human experience. He had faced the wilderness, battled the forces of nature, and confronted the truth of his mortality. The journey had stripped away his arrogance, replacing it with humility and wisdom, but it had also left him feeling hollow, as if he had traded one form of emptiness for another. As he walked the familiar path toward his city, memories flooded his mind. He thought of Enkidu, the brother he had lost, the one who had taught him about friendship, love, and the joys of life. He longed to share his newfound wisdom with Enkidu, to tell him that he had learned the hard way that life was fleeting, but that it was also rich with experiences worth cherishing. He recalled their adventures together, their laughter, their fights, and the bond that had once made him feel invincible. Now that bond felt like a ghost, haunting him with its absence. Upon arriving in Uruk, Gilgamesh found the city as he had left it, bustling with life and activity. The people went about their daily routines, oblivious to the great journey their king had undertaken. He saw the towering walls that he had built, the magnificent temples and the gardens that flourished in the city's heart. But instead of pride, he felt a deep sense of melancholy. The grandeur of Uruk was a stark reminder of his own limitations, the futility of his quest for immortality. As he walked through the streets, he noticed the people around him. He saw a mother cradling her child, a farmer tending to his fields, and a merchant haggling over prices. Each person was engaged in their own small battles, striving to find meaning in their lives, to carve out moments of joy amidst the inevitable sorrow. Gilgamesh realized that they too were searching for something: love, security, purpose, connection. He understood now that this was what it meant to be human: to struggle, to love, to lose, and to hope. In the midst of this realization, Gilgamesh found himself standing before the grand walls of Uruk, staring up at the imposing structure he had built with his own hands. The walls were not just a symbol of his power. They were a testament to the legacy he would leave behind. He had once believed that he could escape death through his accomplishments, that his name would live forever etched in history. But now he understood that true immortality lay not in monuments or accolades, but in the lives we touch and the love we share. With this newfound perspective, Gilgamesh sought out the people of Uruk. He spoke to them, sharing the lessons he had learned on his journey. "Life is a precious gift," he said, his voice resonating with sincerity. "We must embrace each moment, cherish our relationships, and live fully, for we do not know how much time we have. Do not waste your days in pursuit of things that do not matter. Instead, find joy in the simple, the everyday. the fleeting beauty of existence. The people listened, captivated by the wisdom of their king. They recognized the change in him, the depth of his understanding, and they began to reflect on their own lives. Gilgamesh encouraged them to love deeply, to forgive freely, and to live without regret. He urged them to create memories, to celebrate life, and to honor their connections with one another. In time, Gilgamesh's words became a guiding philosophy for the people of Uruk. They embraced the idea that life was not about the pursuit of immortality, but about the moments that made life worth living. They learned to celebrate the seasons, to honor their families, and to find joy in the ordinary. The city thrived as its inhabitants grew closer, their bonds strengthened by the shared understanding of their mortality. As the years passed, Gilgamesh aged, but he did not fear the process. He welcomed it. He had come to accept that aging was a natural part of life, a journey that brought its own wisdom and grace. He found peace in knowing that his legacy would not be defined by grand monuments, but by the love he had fostered, the friendships he had nurtured, and the lives he had touched. In his final days, Gilgamesh looked out over the city of Uruk, a place that had once represented his thirst for power and glory. Now, it stood as a testament to the beauty of human connection, the richness of shared experiences, and the acceptance of life's impermanence. He smiled, knowing that he had truly lived, as he took his last breath surrounded by those he loved. He felt a profound sense of gratitude. He had learned that while life was fleeting, it was also beautiful, filled with moments of joy, love, and connection. He'd come to understand that death was not the end, but a part of the cycle of life, a transition that would lead to new beginnings and new stories. In the hearts of the people of Uruk, Gilgamesh would live on, not as a king who sought to conquer death, but as a man who learned to embrace life in all its complexity. His legacy would endure, not in stone or memory, but in the love and wisdom he had shared, forever echoing through the lives he had touched. As the sun dipped low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the city of Uruk, Gilgamesh felt the weight of his years settle comfortably on his shoulders. The vibrant sounds of the marketplace filled the air, merchants calling out their wares in melodious voices, children laughing and playing in the dusty streets, and the sweet melodies of musicians filling the air with haunting beauty. This was the life he had fought to protect, the life he had come to cherish deeply. And now, as he stood at the threshold of mortality, he felt a profound sense of peace wash over him like a gentle tide returning to shore. With each passing day, Gilgamesh found joy in the simplest of pleasures, the kind of joy that had eluded him during his years of power and glory. He would often stroll through the lush gardens within the city, where fragrant flowers bloomed in brilliant colors, crimson reds, soft pinks, deep purples, and sunny yellows, their scents mingling with the warm breeze that drifted through the pathways. He would pause to admire the careful work of the gardeners, who tended to the land with love and dedication, their hands stained with earth, their hearts filled with purpose. They were nurturing life in every petal and leaf, creating beauty that would fade and return with the seasons. In those moments of stillness, he was reminded of the fragility of existence, the beauty that could be found in the present moment, and the importance of nurturing not just the land, but the people who inhabited it. One afternoon, as he sat beneath a grand fig tree, its branches heavy with ripening fruit that hung like emeralds catching the light, Gilgamesh was approached by a group of children. They ranged in age from barely able to walk to those on the cusp of adolescence. Each one curious and full of life, their eyes sparkling with innocence and wonder. They knew of their king's journey, of the great adventures he had undertaken, of the monsters he had slain, and the lands he had traversed. But what fascinated them most were the tales he would share, the personal stories, the moments of vulnerability, the lessons learned through suffering and joy. They gathered around him, eager to hear his story, sitting cross-legged on the cool earth, and he delighted in recounting the experiences that had shaped him, a time when he had fought fierce monsters with claws and teeth, forged unbreakable bonds of friendship that transcended the ordinary, and wrestled with the very essence of life and death, grappling with questions that had no easy answers. "Tell us again about Enkidu," one child urged, her voice filled with excitement and wonder. "Tell us how you became friends. Tell us about the wild man who came from the forest." Gilgamesh smiled, his heart swelling with warmth at the memory of his dear companion, the one who had changed everything. "Enkidu was not like any other man," he began, his voice taking on a storyteller's cadence, rising and falling with emotion. "He was born from the wild, a creature of the earth who roamed freely among the animals, speaking their language, understanding their ways. He knew nothing of civilization, of cities, of the ways of men. But when he came to Uruk, he found friendship and humanity in the unlikeliest of places, in the heart of a proud king who had never known true companionship." The children leaned forward, completely absorbed in the narrative unfolding before them. "When Enkidu first arrived in our city," Gilgamesh continued, "he was wild and untamed, his hair long and matted, his body strong as the great cedar trees of the mountains. I sent him a woman named Shamhat to teach him the ways of civilization, to help him understand the customs and traditions of our people. And through her kindness and patience, Enkidu began to transform. He learned to speak our language more fluently, to wear clothes, to eat bread and drink beer, to appreciate the pleasures of human company." "But did you like him right away?" asked a curious boy with bright eyes. "No," Gilgamesh admitted honestly. "At first, I was intrigued by him, fascinated by his strength and his wildness. But I did not yet understand that he would become my closest companion, my brother in all but blood. We wrestled together and I defeated him, and in that moment of victory, something shifted. We recognized something in each other, a kindred spirit, a reflection of our own souls. From that day forward, we were inseparable." As he spoke, the children listened with rapt attention, hanging on his every word. They were captivated not only by the epic nature of his tales, but also by the profound messages woven within them. They learned about the importance of loyalty, the strength found in companionship, and the value of living life to its fullest, embracing both joy and sorrow. Gilgamesh reveled in their laughter and questions, feeling a sense of purpose as he passed down the lessons he had learned through suffering and sacrifice. "We faced many challenges together," he continued, his voice growing more animated. "We journeyed to the great cedar forest and battled Humbaba, the terrible guardian whose roar shook the earth and whose presence filled us with dread. We fought the bull of heaven, a creature sent by the goddess Ishtar to punish me for my pride and my rejection of her love. Each battle tested our strength and courage, but it was our bond that made us truly powerful. Alone, I could have defeated these enemies, but together, with Enkidu at my side, we were invincible." One of the younger children, a girl with curious eyes, raised her hand hesitantly. "What happened to Enkidu, my king? Why is he not here with you now?" The atmosphere shifted, and a shadow passed over Gilgamesh's face. He took a deep breath, preparing himself to speak of the loss that had changed everything, the grief that had driven him to the wilderness in search of immortality. "Enkidu became ill," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "The gods punished him for our transgressions, for our arrogance in slaying Humbaba and the bull of heaven. He lay on his deathbed for many days, and I sat beside him holding his hand, willing him to live. But death came for him as it comes for all of us, and no amount of love or desperation could stop it. When he died, I felt as though a part of my own soul had been torn away. I could not accept that he was gone, that I would never see him again, that death had claimed the one I loved most." The children sat in solemn silence, their faces reflecting the weight of his words. "That is when I ran from Uruk," Gilgamesh continued. "That is when I set out on my quest to find Utnapishtim, to discover the secret of immortality, to somehow undo what had been done. I was consumed by grief and rage, by the desperate hope that I could change the course of fate. But in my journey, I learned something far more valuable than the secret to immortality. I learned that death is not our enemy. Death is simply a part of life, and by accepting it, by acknowledging our mortality, we can truly live." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the ground, Gilgamesh felt a gentle tug at his heart. He realized that in sharing his stories, he was not just imparting wisdom, but also preserving the memory of Enkidu and the lessons they had learned together. He understood that their friendship and the journey they had embarked upon would live on in the hearts of these children, shaping their lives and guiding their actions long after he was gone. The stories would be passed from one generation to the next, like a sacred flame kept alive by the breath of those who remembered. "Remember this," he said to the children, his voice filled with gentle authority. "Life is a journey, and we must cherish those we love. We may not live forever, but the connections we make can endure through the stories we tell and the love we share. When someone we love dies, they do not truly leave us. They live on in our memories, in the lessons they taught us, in the way they changed us forever." With each story he told, he was weaving a tapestry of legacy, one that would transcend the boundaries of time and space, connecting generations through shared experiences and emotions. The children would grow up with these tales, passing them on to their own children and their children's children, ensuring that the spirit of Gilgamesh and Enkidu would never fade from the collective memory of Uruk. The city itself would become a living monument to their friendship, their struggles, and their ultimate wisdom. As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, Gilgamesh continued to engage with his people, fostering relationships with them in ways that were far deeper and more meaningful than the superficial respect they had once shown him as a king. He listened to their dreams, their hopes of becoming skilled craftspeople, their desires to find love, their aspirations to provide better lives for their families. He listened to their struggles, the hardships they faced, the losses they endured, the fears that kept them awake at night. He listened to their hopes, their faith in the future, their belief that better days were coming, their determination to overcome adversity. He offered guidance and support, helping them navigate the complexities of life with wisdom earned through his own trials and tribulations. In doing so, He found that his heart expanded with each connection he forged, filling the void left by Enkidu's absence with a new kind of love. A broader, more encompassing love that extended to all of humanity. He realized that love could manifest in many forms. It could be the passionate, exclusive bond between two souls, like the love he had shared with Enkidu. It could also be the generous, all-encompassing love of a community, the kind that grew when people worked together for the common good, when they supported one another through hardship, when they celebrated together in times of joy. Through nurturing his community, he was cultivating a new kind of family, one that extended beyond blood relations to include all those whose lives he touched. One day, while walking through the marketplace in the early morning hours when the vendors were just beginning to set up their stalls, Gilgamesh encountered a young man who was visibly distressed. The young man, a farmer named Lugal, had just lost his crops to a sudden storm that had swept through the region without warning, bringing torrential rains and violent winds that had flattened the fields he had spent months cultivating. His eyes were filled with despair as he recounted how all his hard work, the planting, the weeding, the careful tending of the soil, had been washed away in an instant, leaving him with nothing but mud and broken stalks. He spoke of his family's hunger, of the debt he owed to the merchants from whom he had borrowed seeds, of the shame he felt at his inability to provide. Gilgamesh felt a surge of compassion for the young man, recalling his own struggles and the trials he had faced. He remembered the despair he had felt when Enkidu died, the way grief had consumed him, the sense that his world had ended. He understood the weight of loss, the crushing burden of helplessness. "Do not lose hope, Lugal," Gilgamesh said, placing a reassuring hand on the young man's shoulder. His voice was steady and filled with conviction. Life has a way of testing us, but it also offers us opportunities for renewal and growth. This storm may have taken your crops, but it has also enriched the soil with nutrients and moisture. You can plant again, and with patience and perseverance, you will see the fruits of your labor once more. The cycle of life continues, and with it comes the possibility of redemption. Lugal looked up, his expression shifting from despair to a glimmer of hope, as if a light had been kindled in the darkness of his despair. "You truly believe that, my king?" he asked, his voice trembling with emotion. "I know it," Gilgamesh replied, his tone earnest and deeply sincere. "Every setback is a chance to grow stronger, to learn new skills, to discover resilience you did not know you possessed. Embrace this challenge and let it teach you. You're not alone in this. Your community stands with you, ready to help you rebuild." That is the beauty of human connection. We can bear each other's burdens. With those words, Gilgamesh inspired Lugal to rally his fellow farmers. They came together to support one another, sharing resources and knowledge, working side by side to restore their fields. Some brought seeds from their own stores, others offered tools and labor, and still others provided food and shelter as the work progressed. In the days that followed, Gilgamesh witnessed the power of unity and collaboration, the strength that emerged when people joined forces for a common purpose. This experience reinforced his belief that true immortality lay not in individual glory, but in the collective spirit of humanity, in the way that people could come together to overcome adversity and create something beautiful from the ruins of disaster. As seasons changed and the years rolled on, Gilgamesh continued to embrace the lessons of life. He found solace in the beauty of the world around him, the vibrant colors of the flowers that bloomed in the gardens, the laughter of children playing in the streets, the warmth of the sun on his skin as he sat in contemplation. He learned to appreciate the moments of stillness, the quiet reflections that came in the early morning light when the city was still asleep, and he could hear the gentle songs of birds greeting the new day. He began to meditate on the cycles of nature, recognizing that life and death, joy and sorrow, growth and decay were all intertwined in a delicate dance that had been choreographed since the beginning of time. One evening, as he gazed up at the stars twinkling in the vast sky, each one a distant sun with its own mysteries and possibilities, Gilgamesh felt a deep connection to everything around him. He understood that he was part of something far greater than himself, a vast tapestry of life that spanned generations, stretching back into the mists of time and forward into a future he would not see. The stories of his ancestors echoed in his heart, guiding him as he navigated the complexities of existence. He felt a sense of belonging that transcended time, a continuity that linked him to those who had come before and those who would come after. In that moment, he experienced a profound unity with all of creation, a recognition that separation was an illusion and that all beings were connected through the great web of existence. In his final days, Gilgamesh became a living testament to the power of love, community, and acceptance. He surrounded himself with friends and family, sharing laughter, stories, and moments of connection. He spent his time with those he loved most, listening to their voices, feeling the warmth of their presence, and knowing that these moments were the true treasures of life. He encouraged others to live fully, to embrace their unique journeys, to find meaning in the everyday, and to never stop loving those around them. And when the time came for him to take his last breath, surrounded by the warmth of those he loved, feeling their hands holding his, hearing their voices whispering words of love and gratitude, he felt a profound sense of gratitude washing over him like a warm tide. He had learned that while life was fleeting, it was also beautiful and rich with experiences that could not be measured by material wealth or monumental achievements. He had embraced his humanity, accepted his mortality, and discovered that true immortality lay in the hearts of those he had touched. As his spirit departed from the earthly realm, Gilgamesh knew that he would live on, not in the grand monuments of stone that would eventually crumble and fade, but in the stories shared around fires on cool evenings, in the laughter of children playing in the streets, in the love that would continue to flow through Uruk for generations to come. He had found the legacy he had sought, not in the pursuit of immortality, but in the simple, profound truth that life, in all its complexity and fragility, was a gift to be cherished, celebrated, and shared.